Every morning, before the sun fully rose, Maya was already awake. She sat quietly at the edge of her small bed, staring at the wall for a few seconds before standing up. Her body felt tired, like she had not really slept, but she pushed herself up anyway. There was no time to rest. There was always somewhere she needed to be. Her room was simple. A small bed, a plastic chair, and a narrow table with a cracked mirror on top. Nothing fancy, nothing comfortable, but it was enough for her. Maya dressed in her waitress uniform, black trousers, a white shirt, and a slightly faded apron. She tied her hair neatly and looked at herself in the mirror. For a second, she forced a small smile. Then it disappeared. At the restaurant, Maya moved quickly from table to table. She carried trays carefully, wrote down orders, and responded politely to every customer. "Good afternoon, sir. I'll bring your order shortly. Thank you so much." Her voice was soft,
Calm, kind.
Customers liked her. Some even smiled back warmly. But none of them knew what was behind that gentle attitude. They didn't see how tired she was. They didn't see the weight she carried inside. By the time her shift ended, her legs felt weak from standing all day. She went to a quiet corner and counted her tips slowly, adding them to the money she had already saved in a small envelope. She didn't separate any for herself, not even a little, because she already knew where it was going. That night, like every other month, Maya didn't go straight home. She walked down a quieter street, her steps slower than usual. Her fingers tightened around her bag as she approached a small building at the end of the road. She stopped in front of the door. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing slowly. Then she knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Daniel stood there, his eyes going straight to her face, then to her bag. "You're late," he said coldly. "I had extra work today," Maya replied quietly. He stepped aside without another word, allowing her to enter. The room felt heavy, uncomfortable, like the air itself carried tension. Maya didn't sit. She didn't relax. She simply stood near the door, already reaching into her bag. Her fingers shook slightly as she pulled out the envelope. She looked at it for a second, then handed it to him. Daniel took it without hesitation. He opened it immediately and began counting the money. "That's everything?" he asked. Maya nodded softly. "Yes." He stared at her for a moment, then slipped the money into his pocket. "No thank you. No kindness. Nothing. Next time, don't keep me waiting," he said. Maya lowered her eyes. "Okay. You can go." That was all. No goodbye. No care. Maya turned and walked out quietly. Outside, the night air felt cold against her skin. She hugged her bag close, even though it was now empty. This wasn't love. She knew that. It hadn't been love for a long time, if it ever was. But Daniel knew things about her, things she wished she could forget. And every time she thought about leaving, he reminded her why she couldn't. So she stayed. And every month, she paid. The next evening, Maya returned to the restaurant. Everything looked normal. The same tables, the same lights, the same soft music playing in the background. But something felt different. As she moved between tables, she noticed a man sitting quietly in the corner. He wasn't talking. He wasn't calling for service. He just sat there, watching. Not in a strange way, but in a careful, observant way. Maya tried not to look at him again, but somehow she could feel his eyes on her. Later that night, as she reached forward to pick up a tray, her sleeve moved slightly. Just for a second. A dark bruise showed on her wrist. Maya quickly pulled her sleeve down, her heart beating faster. She looked around, hoping no one had seen it. But someone had. In the corner of the room, the man was still watching. His expression didn't change, but his eyes became sharper, colder, more focused. Maya quickly looked away, pretending nothing had happened. But she could still feel it. That gaze. Heavy, unmoving. And for the first time in a long time, something shifted. Because the man who had been quietly watching her was not just another customer. And whatever he had seen that night, he was not going to ignore it. Maya woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating on the table beside her bed. Her heart skipped. For a second, She just stared at it. Then she quickly picked it up. Daniel calling. She answered immediately. "Good morning," she said softly. There was a short silence on the other end. "Why didn't you answer my message last night?" His voice came, low and sharp. Maya swallowed. I slept early. I was tired." Another pause. "You were online," he said. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. "I just checked something quickly. Don't lie to me." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The calmness in it was worse. "I'm not lying," she said quickly, her voice almost shaking. That single sound made her chest feel tight. "I'll come by later," he added. "Be ready." The call ended. Maya lowered the phone slowly, her hands already trembling. This was how every day began. Not with peace. Not with rest. But with fear. Later that afternoon, she was at the restaurant, moving between tables as usual. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to the call. When her shift ended, she stepped outside and saw him. Daniel was leaning against his car, arms crossed, waiting. Maya's stomach tightened immediately. She walked toward him slowly. "You finished," he said, looking at his watch. "Yes." "Get in." She didn't ask questions. She just obeyed. Inside the car, the silence felt heavy. After a few minutes, Daniel spoke. "Give me your phone." Maya hesitated for just a second. Then she handed it over. He unlocked it easily. He already knew her password. He always did. Daniel scrolled through her messages, her call logs, her social media. His face remained blank, but his eyes moved carefully, like he was searching for something. Anything. "Who is this?" he asked suddenly. Maya leaned slightly. "A customer. He just asked about something he left behind." Daniel looked at her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he deleted the chat. "Next time don't reply," he said. Maya nodded. "Okay." He dropped the phone back into her lap. When they arrived at her apartment, Maya moved to open the door, but Daniel stopped her. "Where are you going tomorrow?" he asked. "To work," she answered. "What time?" "Morning shift. After that, I'll come home." "Straight home," he corrected. "Yes." "No stopping anywhere. No visiting anyone." Maya nodded again. "Yes." Daniel stepped closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming. "I don't like repeating myself," he said quietly. "I understand." He studied her face, like he was trying to read her thoughts. "You understand because I make sure you do," he added. Maya didn't reply. She couldn't. Inside the apartment, she moved around quietly, trying not to draw attention to herself. But Daniel followed her with his eyes, watching every movement.
"Sit," he said.
She sat. "Do you remember what happens when you don't listen?" he asked. Maya's chest tightened. "Yes." "Say it." Her voice dropped. You get angry." Daniel shook his head slowly. "That's not all." Maya looked down at her hands. "You remind me," she said softly. He leaned closer. "Of what?" Her throat felt dry. "Of the money I owe," she whispered. Daniel smiled slightly. "Good." That was the real reason. Not love. Not loyalty.
Debt.
Years ago, when Maya had nowhere to go, no family to support her and no money to survive, Daniel had stepped in. At least that was how it started. He paid for her rent, helped her settle, made it seem like he was saving her. But nothing he gave was free. Every naira became a chain. Every help became control. And when she couldn't pay it back, he made sure she paid in other ways. Her salary, her freedom, her peace. Everything. Maya stood up slowly, trying to move toward the kitchen. But Daniel grabbed her wrist suddenly.
Tight.
Too tight. She winced slightly. "You're quiet today," he said. "I'm just tired." His grip didn't loosen. "Or, are you hiding something?" "I'm not." He held her for a few more seconds, then released her. Maya pulled her hand back quickly, trying to hide the pain. But it was already there. A dark mark forming slowly on her wrist. She turned away, her heart beating fast. Daniel watched her silently. And Maya knew. Nothing in her life belonged to her anymore. The man in the corner had been coming to the restaurant for days. No one knew his name. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't talk much. He simply walked in, took the same seat near the window, and ordered quietly. Black coffee. That was all. He always paid in cash. He never stayed longer than necessary. And yet there was something about him that made people notice, even when he said nothing. His presence was calm, but not soft. It was the kind of calm that came from control, from power, from someone who didn't need to prove anything. The staff whispered about him, sometimes. Maybe he's a businessman, one said. Or someone important, another added. But no one asked him directly. No one dared. Maya noticed him too. At first, she tried not to. He was just another customer. That's what she told herself. But something about him made it hard to ignore. It wasn't the way he dressed, even though his clothes were simple but expensive. It wasn't his face, even though it was sharp, composed, and unreadable. It was his eyes. They didn't wander like other customers. They didn't stare in a careless or disrespectful way. They observed,
Carefully.
like he was always thinking, always noticing. And somehow they always seemed to land on her. That afternoon, Maya approached his table with her usual calm expression. Good afternoon, sir. What would you like to order? He looked up at her. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Maya felt it again. That strange, steady gaze.
Coffee, he said. His voice was low, controlled.
Not harsh, but not warm either. All right, sir. She turned quickly and walked away. But her hands felt slightly colder than before. When she returned with his coffee, he thanked her with a simple nod. Nothing more. No unnecessary conversation.
No attempt to keep her there.
But as she placed the cup down, he noticed something. Her smile. It was polite, well-practiced, but incomplete. It didn't reach her eyes. He had seen many people in his life. People who pretended.
People who lied.
People who hid things. And he recognized it immediately. That kind of smile was not real. Over the next few days, he kept watching. Not in an obvious way, but enough. He noticed how she moved. Always careful. Always aware. As if she was thinking about something else, even while working. He noticed how she checked the time often, especially toward the end of her shift. Her fingers would tighten slightly around her tray. Her steps would slow. Her expression would change. Not fear, but close. Anticipation. Like she was waiting for something she didn't want to face. Then came payday. The restaurant was busier than usual. Customers filled almost every table. The noise was louder, the movement faster. But Maya was quieter. He saw it immediately. She made fewer mistakes, but her hands were not as steady. She avoided eye contact more than usual. And when she thought no one was looking, her expression dropped completely. No smile, no calmness, just tension, pure and visible. He sat back in his chair, watching her carefully. Then he called her over. Maya hesitated for a second before walking to his table. Yes, sir? You seem tired, he said. Maya blinked slightly. The question caught her off guard. I'm fine, she replied quickly. He studied her face. You don't look fine. Maya forced a small smile. It's just work. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he picked up his cup and took a slow sip of his coffee. Then he placed it back down. Work doesn't usually make people look like that, he said calmly. Maya's fingers tightened slightly at her sides. I'm okay, sir, she repeated. There was a brief silence. Then he nodded. As you say. She turned quickly and walked away. But her heart was beating faster now. From his seat, he continued watching. Not with curiosity anymore, but with intention. Something was wrong. That much was clear. And he didn't like unanswered questions. Later that night, when most of the customers had left, he called one of the staff members over. A minute, he said quietly. The young man nodded quickly. Yes, sir. The waitress, he said, glancing briefly in Maya's direction. How long has she worked here? About a year, the staff replied. She always like this? The staff hesitated. Like what, sir? He paused. Careful, he said. The staff gave a small nod. She's always quiet. Keeps to herself. No family, he asked. I don't think so. He nodded once. That will be all. As he stood up to leave, His eyes moved toward Maya one last time. She was standing behind the counter, counting money slowly, her face serious, her shoulders slightly tense. For a moment she stopped, as if she felt something. She looked up. Their eyes met again. This time, she looked away first. The man adjusted his jacket and walked toward the exit. His expression remained calm, but his mind was already working, because whatever was happening to her was not ordinary, and he had no intention of ignoring it. The evening started like any other. The restaurant was busy. Plates clattered softly, low music played in the background, and voices blended into a steady hum. Maya moved from table to table, taking orders, serving food, and keeping her usual calm expression. But inside, she was not calm.
It was payday.
She could feel it in her chest. That tight, heavy feeling that never left her on days like this. She tried to focus on her work, but her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance. Waiting, hoping, and at the same time dreading. The door opened suddenly. Maya froze. She didn't need to look. She already knew,
But she did anyway.
Daniel stood at the entrance, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. Her stomach dropped instantly. He wasn't supposed to come here. Not here. Not like this. Some customers glanced in his direction, sensing the tension before anything even happened. Maya quickly looked down and tried to continue working, pretending she hadn't seen him. But it was too late. Daniel was already walking toward her.
Slow.
Confident. Like he owned the place. Maya. His voice cut through the noise. Not loud, but sharp enough to make her stop. She turned slowly. Yes, come here. Her hands tightened around the tray she was holding. I'm working, she said softly. Daniel's expression didn't change. I said come here. A few nearby customers began to watch. Maya felt it. The attention. The pressure. She forced a small smile and walked toward him, trying to keep things calm. Please not here, she whispered. But Daniel wasn't interested in keeping things quiet. Where is it? He asked. Maya's heart started racing. I'll bring it later, she said quickly. After my shift. He cut her off.
Now. His voice was firmer this time.
People were definitely watching now. The manager looked over from across the room, unsure whether to step in. Maya shook her head slightly, silently begging him not to interfere. She didn't want things to get worse. I don't have it with me, she said, her voice barely steady. Daniel stepped closer. Too close. Don't lie to me, he said. I'm not. Before she could finish, his hand grabbed her wrist.
Tight.
Maya gasped softly. Let's go, he said. Daniel, please. He pulled her forward. The tray slipped from her hand and crashed to the floor, plates breaking loudly. The restaurant fell silent. Stop it, Maya said, her voice shaking now. But Daniel didn't stop. You think you can ignore me? He snapped. You think you can embarrass me like this? I'm not. Please, you're hurting me. He tightened his grip. Then don't make me repeat myself. Maya tried to pull back, but his hold was too strong. Her eyes filled with panic, not just from the pain, but from the fear of what would happen next. And then, let her go. The voice came from behind them.
Calm. Low.
But it cut through the tension like a blade. Daniel paused slightly. So did Maya. Slowly, Daniel turned. The man from the corner stood there. The quiet customer. The one who always watched. His expression was unchanged. No anger. No rush. Just stillness. Controlled. Dangerously calm. This doesn't concern you, Daniel said. The man didn't move. You're causing a scene, he replied simply. Daniel let out a short laugh. And what? You're going to stop me? The man's eyes shifted briefly to Maya's wrist. Still trapped. Still hurting. Then back to Daniel. Yes, he said. The word was quiet, but something about it made the air feel heavier. Daniel scoffed. Mind your business. He turned slightly, pulling Maya again. But this time, he didn't get far. The man stepped forward. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just enough. And suddenly he was right there. Close enough that Daniel had to stop. Close enough that the space between them felt tight. Let go, the man said again. Daniel hesitated. Just for a second. Something in the man's presence didn't feel normal, didn't feel safe to challenge. But his pride pushed him forward. Or what? Daniel asked. The man looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, Daniel's confidence cracked. Just slightly. Or you'll regret it, the man said calmly. No threat in his voice. No raised tone. Just certainty. Silence filled the room. Everyone was watching now, waiting. Maya's heart was pounding loudly in her chest. She could feel the tension between them.
Thick.
Dangerous. Then slowly, Daniel released her wrist. Maya pulled her hand back immediately, holding it close to her chest. Her breathing was uneven, her body trembling slightly. Daniel stepped back, his jaw tight. This isn't over, he said, looking at her. Then his eyes shifted to the man. A warning, but weaker now, less certain. The man didn't respond. He simply stood there, watching, unmoved. After a moment, Daniel turned and walked out of the restaurant. The door shut behind him. Silence lingered for a few seconds longer. Then slowly, the noise returned. But nothing felt the same anymore. Maya stood there, still shaken, her wrist throbbing. She didn't look up immediately. She couldn't. But she felt it. That presence again. Closer this time. Stronger. When she finally lifted her eyes, the man was still there, looking at her. Not with curiosity. Not with pity. But with something else. Something steady. Something dangerous. And for the first time, Maya realized the quiet man who had been watching her all this time was not someone ordinary. And tonight, he had just stepped into her life. The restaurant slowly returned to normal, but the tension did not leave. Maya stood near the counter, her wrist still aching where Daniel had grabbed her. She tried to focus on her breathing, but it was uneven. Her hands felt cold. The man who had stepped in was still standing close by.
Calm.
Unmoved. As if nothing unusual had just happened. Maya didn't understand it. Why would a stranger do that? Why would he interfere? Daniel hadn't left completely. A few minutes later, the door opened again. He stepped back inside. This time, slower. More careful. But his eyes were still hard. Still stubborn. I told you, he said, looking directly at Maya. This isn't over. Maya's chest tightened again.
She didn't respond.
She couldn't. Then Daniel's gaze shifted to the man. You think this changes anything? He asked. The man adjusted his sleeve slightly, his movements slow and controlled. It already has, he replied.
His voice was calm.
Not loud, but it carried weight. Daniel gave a short, dry laugh. You don't even know her, he said. You don't know what's going on. The man looked at Maya for a brief moment, then back at Daniel. I know enough, he said. There was something in the way he spoke. Not emotional, not aggressive, just certain. And that certainty made Daniel uneasy, even if he didn't show it clearly. Daniel stepped forward, not too close, but enough to try and take control again. You're getting involved in something that doesn't concern you, he said. The man didn't move. Then stop making it public, he replied. Silence stretched between them, the kind that made people stop what they were doing just to listen. Even the staff behind the counter had gone quiet again. Maya stood there, watching both of them.
Her heart was beating fast.
She didn't know what to do.
Didn't know what to say.
She had never seen Daniel like this before. Not like this. Usually, he was the one in control. The one people avoided. The one who decided how things went.
But now,
something was different. Daniel noticed it too. That shift. That loss of control. And he didn't like it. You think you're better than me? He asked, his tone sharper now. The man didn't react. I don't think about you at all, he said calmly. That answer hit harder than any insult. Daniel's jaw tightened. His hands clenched slightly. But he didn't move closer. He didn't touch Maya again. Because something about this man didn't feel safe to challenge. Not directly. Not recklessly. Stay out of this, Daniel said finally. It sounded like a warning. But it didn't carry the same strength as before. The man looked at him steadily.
No, he said. Just that.
Nothing more. Another silence. Heavier this time. Maya felt her throat tighten. She didn't understand any of this. Why was this man helping her? He didn't know her. He didn't owe her anything. And yet, he stood there like it mattered. Daniel exhaled sharply. Then he looked at Maya. His expression changed slightly. Not softer, but calculating. "We'll talk later," he said quietly. That familiar tone returned. The one that always made her feel trapped. Maya nodded without thinking. It was automatic. A habit she couldn't break. The man noticed. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react immediately. But his eyes stayed on her, observing, understanding more than she said out loud. Daniel looked back at him one last time. A silent warning. Then he turned and walked out again. This time he didn't come back. The door closed, and the restaurant slowly returned to life again. Maya stood there for a few seconds, not moving. Then she turned slightly. The man was still there, watching her. "Are you okay?" he asked.
His voice was softer now.
Still calm, but different. Maya hesitated.
She didn't know how to answer.
"I'm fine," she said. It was the same answer she always gave. The man looked at her for a moment, then nodded slightly. But it was clear. He didn't believe her. Maya lowered her eyes.
Confused.
Overwhelmed. And unsure of what was happening. Because for the first time in a long time, someone had stepped into her situation. Without fear. Without hesitation. And she didn't know why. The restaurant had almost emptied out by the time Maya finished cleaning the last table.
Her body felt weak.
Not just from work, but from everything that had happened earlier. She moved slowly behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, trying to act normal. But inside, nothing felt normal. Her wrist still hurt. Her chest still felt tight. And her mind wouldn't stop replaying the scene. "Can we talk?" The voice came from behind her.
Calm. Steady.
Maya turned. The man was standing a few steps away. The same man who had stepped in. The same man who had not looked away. She hesitated. For a moment, she almost said no. That would have been easier. Safer. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he stood. Not forcing. Not demanding. Just waiting. "Okay," she said quietly. They stepped outside the restaurant. The night air was cooler now. The street was quieter. Only a few cars passed by, and the lights from the buildings gave a soft glow to the road. Maya wrapped her arms around herself. Not because she was cold, but because she didn't know what else to do. The man didn't stand too close. He gave her space. Then he spoke. "That man," he said. "He comes often?" Maya shook her head.
No.
"He knows you well." It wasn't a question. Maya looked down at the ground. "Yes." There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. "You're afraid of him," he said. Maya's fingers tightened slightly against her arms. She didn't answer. "You don't have to lie," he added. His tone wasn't harsh, but it was direct. Maya let out a small breath. "I'm not lying," she said softly. But her voice didn't sound convincing. Not even to herself. The man watched her carefully. Then his eyes moved briefly to her wrist. The mark was still there.
Dark. Clear.
"How long?" he asked. Maya swallowed. "I don't know," she said. "A while." "How long is a while?" She hesitated again. "Almost 2 years." The answer stayed in the air. Heavy. The man's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. "Why?" he asked. That one word was harder to answer than everything else. Maya shook her head slowly. "I can't just leave," she said. "You can. It's not that simple." Her voice was starting to crack now. She pressed her lips together, trying to stay composed, trying to hold everything in, the way she always did. "He helped me once," she said after a moment. The words came slowly, carefully, like she was choosing them one by one. "I had nowhere to go. No money. No one to call. I was in a bad place." She paused. Her eyes stayed on the ground. "He paid for my rent. Helped me get this job. Made sure I was okay." The man listened without interrupting. "At first it felt like someone finally cared," she continued. Her voice grew weaker. But then things changed. She let out a shaky breath. "He started asking for money. Small things at first. Then more. Then everything." Her hands dropped to her sides. "I tried to keep up. I tried to pay him back. but it was never enough. The man's jaw tightened slightly, still silent. He knows things about me, Maya added. Her voice dropped lower. Things I don't want anyone else to know. Her eyes filled with tears now, but she didn't wipe them. And when I said no, she continued, her voice breaking, he reminds me why I can't. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything she had said. Maya shook her head, her breathing uneven now. I don't even know how I got here, she whispered. I didn't plan this. I didn't want this. Her shoulders trembled slightly. And then, the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic, but real.
Deep.
The kind she had been holding in for too long. I'm tired, she said quietly. So tired. The man didn't move closer immediately. He didn't try to touch her, didn't try to stop her tears. He just stood there, letting her speak, letting her feel, because he understood something important. This wasn't something that could be rushed. After a few moments, Maya slowly wiped her face. Embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said. You don't need to be. She nodded slightly, still not looking at him. The man looked at her again.
Carefully.
Thoughtfully. Everything she had said, every detail, every small piece of truth. It wasn't just a bad situation. It was worse. Much worse than he had first thought. And for the first time, his calm expression shifted. Just slightly. Not with anger. Not yet. But with something deeper. Something colder. Something more dangerous. Because now, he understood exactly what was happening to her. And he was no longer just observing.
He was involved.
The meeting did not happen by chance. Daniel received a message the next morning. Just a time. Just a location. No name. No explanation. At first he ignored it. Then he read it again. Something about it didn't feel normal. But his pride pushed him forward.
He went.
The place was quiet. Not a public restaurant. Not a crowded street. A private lounge, tucked away from noise and attention. When Daniel walked in, everything felt controlled. Too controlled. The air was calm, but not comfortable. It felt like a place where things were decided, not discussed. Over here. The voice came from the far end of the room. Daniel turned. The man was already seated.
Calm. Composed.
Like he had been there for a while. Waiting. Daniel walked over slowly and sat down across from him. You called me here? He asked. The man didn't answer immediately. He poured himself a drink first, then placed the glass down. Yes. Daniel leaned back slightly, trying to look relaxed, trying to stay in control. You could have said what you wanted last night, he said. The man looked at him. Steady. You were not ready to listen. Daniel let out a small scoff. And now I am? Yes. That one word made something shift. Daniel didn't like it, but he didn't show it. What is this about? He asked. The man didn't waste time. Maya. Daniel's expression changed slightly, just for a second. Then it returned to normal. She's not your concern, he said. She is now. Silence. Heavy. Daniel leaned forward. You don't know what you're getting into, he said. She owes me. The man nodded slowly. I know. Daniel frowned. You don't know the full story. I know enough. There was something in his tone. Not defensive. Not emotional. Just certain. Daniel felt it. That pressure again. The same feeling from the restaurant. But stronger now. She came to me when she had nothing, Daniel continued. I helped her. Everything she has is because of me. And now you collect everything she earns, the man replied. Daniel's jaw tightened. That's how it works. No, the man said calmly. That's how you made it work. Daniel's hands clenched slightly on the table. You think you can just come in and change things? He asked. The man leaned back slightly. I already have. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? The man picked up his glass again.
Took a slow sip.
Then placed it back down. Check your accounts, he said. Daniel's stomach tightened. What? Your accounts, the man repeated. Daniel quickly pulled out his phone. His fingers moved faster now. He opened his banking app.
Paused.
Then refreshed. His expression changed. What? He muttered. He checked again. Another account. Same result. Something wrong? The man asked calmly. Daniel looked up, his face no longer confident, no longer in control. What did you do? He demanded. The man didn't raise his voice, didn't move. I corrected a few things, he said. Daniel shook his head. This doesn't make sense. It does, the man interrupted.
His voice was still calm.
But this time, there was weight behind it. You've been operating in ways that attract attention, he continued. Money trails, pressure tactics, threats. Daniel's breathing became uneven. You don't have proof, he said. The man held his gaze. I don't need proof. Silence. Your accounts are frozen, the man added. Pending review. Daniel's face lost color. You can't do that, he said. I didn't, the man replied. But I made sure the right people looked in your direction. Daniel's hand started to shake slightly. He tried to hide it, but it was too late. You think this is a game? He asked, his voice no longer steady. The man leaned forward slightly. No, he said. I think you made a mistake. Daniel swallowed.
Hard.
Stay away from her, the man continued.
Simple. Clear.
And if I don't? Daniel asked. But the question didn't carry the same strength anymore. The man looked at him for a long moment. Then he spoke. If you don't, this will be the smallest problem you face. No threat. No shouting. Just certainty. Daniel looked down at his phone again. At the empty balances. At the frozen accounts. At the reality he could no longer control. Everything he had built.
Gone.
Just like that. He leaned back slowly. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Didn't have control. Didn't have power. The man stood up. Adjusted his jacket. This ends now, he said. Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. Because in that moment, he understood. The man sitting across from him was not someone he could fight. Not someone he could manipulate. Not someone he could threaten. And just like that, Daniel had lost everything. His money, his control, his confidence, and most importantly, his hold over Maya. The silence in Maya's room felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating, just quiet. For the first time in a long time, she sat on her bed without checking her phone, without waiting for it to ring, without that constant fear sitting in her chest. Daniel had not called. Not that day. Not the next. And slowly, something inside her began to settle. At first, she didn't trust it. Freedom felt unfamiliar. Strange. Like something that could disappear at any moment. So she stayed careful. Still checking the door twice before sleeping. Still waking up suddenly in the middle of the night. Still expecting his voice. But it never came. Days turned into a week. Then 2. Nothing. At the restaurant, Maya moved more slowly at first. Not because she was tired, but because she was adjusting. She no longer rushed to check the time. No longer felt that sharp tension at the end of her shift. Her hands stopped shaking. Little by little. One afternoon, a customer smiled at her and said, "You look different today." Maya paused. Then she smiled back. This time, it reached her eyes. She still thought about everything that had happened. Some nights were harder than others. Memories didn't disappear just because the situation changed. Sometimes she would sit quietly, staring at nothing, remembering the fear, the control, the feeling of being trapped. But now, those memories didn't hold her the same way. They didn't control her anymore. And through it all, he didn't push. The man who had stepped into her life, he came to the restaurant sometimes. Still quiet, still calm, but different now, not distant, not just observing. He didn't ask her questions she wasn't ready to answer. Didn't bring up the past unless she did. He simply showed up, sat down, ordered his usual coffee. The first time she walked up to his table again after everything, her heart beat a little faster. Not from fear, but from something else. Something new. "Good afternoon," she said softly. He looked up at her. "Good afternoon." There was a brief pause. Then he added, "You look better." Maya blinked slightly, then nodded. "I feel better," she said. He didn't say anything more, just gave a small nod. And that was enough. Days passed. And slowly, their conversations became a little longer. Simple things. "How was your day?" Busy. That's good. Nothing complicated. Nothing forced. He never tried to get too close. Never crossed any line. Never made her feel uncomfortable. And that meant more than anything. One evening, after her shift ended, she stepped outside and saw him standing near his car. He wasn't waiting in a way that felt controlling. He was just there. Are you heading home? He asked. Yes. I can drop you off. Maya hesitated. Not out of fear, but because she was learning how to trust again. It's okay if you don't want to, he added. No pressure. No expectation. Maya looked at him for a moment, then nodded. Okay. The drive was quiet. Not uncomfortable. Just peaceful. The kind of silence she had never really known before. When they reached her place, he parked the car but didn't turn off the engine. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt slowly.
Thank you, she said.
You're welcome. She paused for a second, then looked at him. Why did you help me? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed forward for a moment. Then he spoke. Because someone should have. Maya felt something shift in her chest.
Soft. Warm.
She nodded slowly, then opened the door. But before stepping out, she turned back slightly. I'm still figuring things out, she said. I know, he replied. Another pause. I'm not in a hurry, he added. Maya held his gaze for a moment, then gave a small smile. A real one. Good night, she said. Good night. She stepped out of the car and walked toward her door. This time, her steps felt lighter. And as she unlocked it and stepped inside, she paused for a moment, looking around, taking it in. It was still the same room, the same bed, the same walls. But everything felt different, because she was no longer trapped, no longer afraid. She was free. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe something simple, something quiet, something powerful. That maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better.